Good evening, everyone. Good evening, and welcome to Tax Tip Tuesday. Today, we are going to be talking about bookkeeping and tax return red flags. Okay, I'm going to give you some pointers of what is considered red flags and some tips on how to combat those red flags. Okay, and so we won't be long today. So if you're new to my page, I am Chastity. I'm the tax pro owner of Grady Tax Plus. I help counselors, coaches, content creators who are new in their business understand their business structure, their taxes, and keep their finances organized. So again, today we're talking about bookkeeping and tax return red flags. Okay, so let's jump right into it. So I'm gonna give you so the reason why, first let me just tell you, the reason why I'm talking about bookkeeping and tax return red flags, because the red flags I'm gonna talk about today, you can't really have one without the other. You can't really have bookkeeping without having the tax return, and vice versa. Your bookkeeping is a direct reflection of your tax return. So that's why it's important that you have bookkeeping in your business. You don't have to be a multi-millionaire or multi-million-dollar business, six-figure business, five-figure business. You can be a three-figure business, four-figure business, and still need bookkeeping. And so that's why what I'm talking about today is really going to help you make sure that you avoid any types of audits in the future, as well as have clean bookkeeping for your business so that you can be able to prosper in the future. So let me talk about one red flag when it comes to the tax return. So if you are new in business, of course you have a lot of startup expenses, right? And so whenever you want to file your tax return, let's say you want to claim those expenses as a loss on your tax return, you have to be cautious of not having certain types of things on your tax return. So one thing that you want to look at is that the advertising expense. So if you have a business where you were doing all the startup and everything, you didn't generate any money, but you don't have any advertising expenses listed on that tax return, then that can cause a red flag because it looks like you weren't really in business. Having an advertising, sorry, my connection. Having an advertisement expense is essential to running a business. An advertisement expense can be anything from a business card, website, domain name. Even if you, so a lot of people don't know this, but if you use Canva, if you pay for Canva to do like your flyers and things like that, that is an advertising expense. So making sure you have something in the category of advertisement is going to help you prevent having an audit for claiming a whole bunch of expenses with little to no income on it. Okay, so that's one red flag. Now, have an advertisement listed on your tax return. And I just gave you some tips on what's considered advertisement so that if you are incurring a whole lot of expenses this year, like if you're just starting in business, definitely get you a domain name, business card. If you want to sign up for some kind of listserv to advertise that your business is available, like for example with counselors, they can use Psychology Today. Those are some tips in order to create an advertising expense so that you don't have a red flag in regards to writing off a whole bunch of expenses. So another red flag I want to talk about is having miscellaneous as a category. Having miscellaneous as a category. I see this a lot when I review prior tax returns from clients who come to me as a new client, and I review their old tax returns, which you should always have your tax professional review your prior tax return whenever you come to them, because your prior tax return tells a lot about what the future can be or will be, because there might be some things that you need on that return for the next return. So I don't want to talk too much about that, but just so you know, it's important to review the prior tax return. So one tax return I reviewed, and it had miscellaneous as the other expense category, and I asked the client, I said, what is this miscellaneous expense? And they couldn't even tell me what it was. Like, what is that a miscellaneous expense that you put or had someone put on a tax return? And you can't tell me, how are you going to be able to tell the IRS if they decided to audit their tax return because they saw miscellaneous with this number right there? So that's why it's important that whenever you're doing your bookkeeping, you want to make sure that everything has its own category. If you're someone who has bookkeeping in place, then you already are aware that bookkeeping, the profit and loss statement, it's a direct reflection of the Schedule C on the tax return or other types of tax returns like S Corp. So when you have that bookkeeping in place, you want to make sure that you have categories for everything that you are purchasing for your business. You want to make action is going bad. But you want to make sure that it can fit in certain the different categories, because when you look at that tax return, you know, if you notice, it has different categories. And so you want to make sure that your expenses can fit in there. If you just have miscellaneous in the other category, in the right-hand line, how are you going to prove what that expense is? And if you can't even tell me what it was, $1,000 of a miscellaneous, what is the miscellaneous? What did you buy? Like, what did you buy? If you can't like articulate that, then you're automatically going to get that deduction taken off, and you're going to have to pay taxes on whatever was taken off because of that miscellaneous deduction. Okay, and that goes for even putting the word other in the category. Just writing the word other, like what is considered other. I want like break that down for yourself, break that down for your preparer in your bookkeeping. Like I said, you want to have a category for everything that you're spending in your business. Okay, even if it's education, create a category for that. And then instead of putting that in miscellaneous, under miscellaneous, you actually just write that in as education. And you give it a specific category, give it a purpose, versus just having it as miscellaneous, because anything and everything can be under miscellaneous. Okay. The third tip I'm going to tell you about, or third red flag, is having whole numbers. Having whole numbers on your tax return. So if you're someone who don't really manage your bookkeeping with a software, and you're just kind of guesstimating things on a spreadsheet, like, for office expenses, I spend like $5,000. Oh, for office supplies, I spend like $10,000. If you're someone who's doing that, that is a red flag, having whole numbers, because whenever you buy something, more than likely you're going to have some kind of sense to it. There's going to be some kind of different odd or even number besides zero on the end of it. And so if your whole tax return expenses have 0,0,0,0,0 on the ends of it, that can be a red flag. That can mean that you possibly didn't really buy that much, or purchase that much expenses for that particular category. Like if you had $5,000 for advertisement, and then $10,000 for supplies and $5,000 for expenses, that doesn't look right, because it's not really giving an accurate reflection of what you actually did in the business. What if you only had $4,500 for advertising expenses, but you rounded up and put $5,000? That is a red flag. So you want to make sure that you have receipts of what you are spending, and you want to make sure that you are tracking it with a bookkeeping software. I'm going to say bookkeeping software. I know a lot of people are, really gung-ho on Excel spreadsheets, but the Excel spreadsheets really limit you. You have to do so much more work on Excel spreadsheet in regards to putting all those numbers in, versus when with the software, you just categorize it as the expenses are feeding in through your bank account. So I'm going to always recommend that you use a bookkeeping software, so that it's easier and more time efficient for you, especially if you're someone who's managing your own bookkeeping. That way you don't have to worry about something being a whole number. If something ends up being a whole number, that's because it actually totaled to be that amount for all the things that you purchased, versus just guesstimating that you just guesstimate the number. Okay, so let me just do a recap. So one of the tips I said, and red flag I mentioned, was having not having advertisement as a business expense whenever you have a whole bunch of expenses without having any kind of income or low income on that tax return. I recommend that you can buy business cards, you can start your website, buy a domain name. Those are things that fall into the advertisement category, and that will help limit your ability, your chances of getting an audit for showing that you're not in business. When you having that advertisement expense will show that you are in business. Okay. Second red flag I talk about is having miscellaneous as a category on tax return. You need to break that down. What is in that miscellaneous category? If you can't tell me or tell the IRS what was in that miscellaneous category that you put on a tax return, then they're going to eliminate that as an expense for you, and you're going to have to pay taxes on that. So like I said, in your bookkeeping, you want to break down all the categories of what you're spending in your business, so that you can, make sure you can feel confident in knowing that you indeed, can take this office, whatever office expense it is for your business, okay, because you have a dedicated category. And that goes for having just the word other as a category too. It goes hand in hand with miscellaneous. And then the third tip and red flag I mentioned was the whole numbers, having whole numbers, rounding to whole numbers when it comes to providing your information to your tax preparer, or if you're doing it yourself and putting it on your tax return. Having whole numbers, the IRS have systems in place that will look for things to trigger. Whole numbers is one of them. So you want to avoid that and just actually track the actual expenses that you purchase for the business, because more than likely it doesn't add up to a whole number as far as like having zeros on the end. And then I just want to give y'all a few bonuses. So things that you definitely need to make sure, and I'm going to have some separate lives on these categories, but just some bonuses that you definitely want to make sure that you are keeping track of. So a mileage log. So if you are using your car, for business, it's essential, it's crucial, it's a requirement that you have a mileage log for that. You want to make sure that you are tracking where you're going and the purpose of it and the dates. It's best to use a mileage, like an app, so that you don't have to worry about manually putting things on a piece of paper. But that is one thing that you must have when you are claiming mileage. You have to have a mileage log. And then the second thing I want to talk about is regards to receipts. There are some things that you buy in your business that is required that you have a receipt, or you will have that deduction eliminated, and meals is one of them. And like I said, I'll have a separate live for meals as well as for car deductions in a separate live. But I just want to give you so you can be aware that these are things you need to have on paper. You need to have proof of is meals, so business meals that you purchase for your business. Okay, so that completes this Tax Tuesday live. I wanted to give you opportunity to work with me. If you are someone who needs a bookkeeping consult, you want to be able to have someone you can, bounce your ideas off of, or pick my brain session in regards to bookkeeping, how to manage your bookkeeping, understanding things regarding business expenses, what you can or cannot take as a business owner, because there are some deductions that you don't qualify depending on your business and depending on your tax structure. So definitely click the link that I have up or below this video. Depending on how you're watching it, you can schedule a bookkeeping tune-up appointment with me. If you're someone who has not gotten your bookkeeping onto a software platform yet, then definitely schedule an appointment with me so that we can talk about how to teach you how to do your own bookkeeping. If you're someone who wants to learn how to do your own bookkeeping, I'm an advocate for people learning how to do their own bookkeeping, because it's something that you need to know. It's a function that you need to know in your business. And then in the future, if you want to hand over the torch, know what you are handing off to them. Okay, so that completes Tax Tuesday live today, and I will see y'all in the next one.